Hey guys, it's so nice to have you here. Welcome back to the Barbara Thompson podcast. I'm actually here with Tully. If you have worked with us or you follow us on socials, you know Tully is the therapy dog at Self Care Studio. And we're actually, are you awake, Tully? Yep. We're hanging on my bed and I feel like I'm a little kid. You know, sometimes when you lie on your stomach and you have your legs swinging. So I'm lying on my stomach on my bed and recording this podcast, and I've got my legs. I need to keep my legs still so I don't sound all over the place. But that's where I am for today's episode. I've got the heater on, nice and warm and snuggly. So I hope that you are, nice and comfortable about to listen to this episode. And today is an episode that feels a little different for me because, if I'm honest, it's one that I've wanted to record for quite some time. And over the years, I've sat with a lot of people as their counsellor, and I've welcomed them into my therapy room, or I've seen them online and I watch them nervously walk through the door or come up on my screen, and I see them take the deep breath as they sit down, and I've heard them say things like, I don't even know where to start, or I've been thinking about cancelling this appointment all week, or I don't know why I'm here. And every single time I hear those words, it takes me back to another version of myself. I'm not sure if you know this, but before I was ever a therapist, I was a client. For many years, I was in the marketing industry, and changing my careers was never, ever anything I thought of. I thought marketing was life for me, and it was just the way that my life turned out that I discovered therapy for myself, and through that I found out, I think this is my thing, and that's why I'm a therapist now. And I've experienced therapy from both chairs now. And I've sat in the chair where you're trying to hold yourself together, wondering what to say, wondering if you're going to cry, wondering if the therapist is judging you, wondering if your problems are even big enough to be there in the first place. And now I've sat in the other chair across when you're a client. I've sat in the therapist chair watching someone else carry those exact same fears. And honestly, those two chairs have taught me two very different lessons. I don't want to tell you how therapy works or what techniques therapists use. Instead, I want to kind of explain things from a different way. I just want to have a conversation with you. And maybe you've been thinking about booking your first appointment, or maybe you've already booked it and you're feeling nervous, or maybe you've been to therapy before and you're wondering, maybe it's time I go back. And wherever you are at those stages, I just hope by the end of this episode you feel a little less alone, maybe a little excited, just because I'm excited about therapy. I know a lot of people aren't, but I hope that you might pick one thing up from this episode that changes your perspective or gives you some tools. And I can still remember what it felt like walking into therapy for myself. Nobody knew. I didn't tell anyone. I was too embarrassed. I remember driving to the place where I was having therapy and okay, where am I going to park? What am I going to do? What's it going to be like? Am I going to like my therapist? I just had so many questions, 100 miles an hour going through my head. Oh my God, are they going to think that I'm messed up? Are they going to all sorts of things? And I just remember waiting to go into the room thinking, where do I even begin? And how do I fit all my years of experiences and heartbreak and self-doubt and questions into this one session? Where do I start with what's happening now? And do I go back to my childhood? Do I tell them about my parents? Do I talk about things that I've never told someone else? I remember feeling all this pressure to somehow explain myself in a perfect way. What happens I'm just talking too fast? Or what happens if they don't understand what I'm saying? And that was all the things that was going around in my head. And now looking back, I just smile at this. And because I really think it's quite sweet. And I realized that I was trying to be the perfect client. I even asked for homework, guys. Who does that? Slow down, Barbara. I didn't realize that I was going to be a therapist when I was a client, but I enjoyed therapy so much. Please, when I say this, I enjoyed it so much, but it was hard. But I don't know, I'm someone that loves a challenge, and I'm someone that likes to be tested, and I like to learn. I'm a learner. I like to learn. And when I uncovered, oh my God, I get to learn about myself and I get to understand why I think the way I do, and I get to understand who I am at my core. There's something in me that woke me up, and I couldn't get enough. But I think underlying that was actually my purpose, but at that time I didn't realize. So I was just thinking, oh, slow down, Barbara, just don't ask for homework. But I literally couldn't help myself. And I wanted to tell my story in the right order, and I wanted to get everything right, and I wanted it to make sense. And I just remember feeling that. And then, I didn't realize that all I had to do, guys, was show up. That's all I had to do. And I did remember thinking, does my therapist like me? I wonder what my therapist thinks of me. Are they analyzing me? Are they reading my body language now? Like, I'd actually kind of sit on my hands sometimes, because I use my hands. If you're a client of mine, I use my hands all the time to talk. So sometimes I'd sit on my hands, and sometimes I'd like really try and micromanage my facial expressions. And because I was thinking, oh, they're going to try and work me out. And do they think that I'm overreacting? Do they think that I should be coping better? And, why do I have all these thoughts running through my head? Or, interesting, when my therapist would ask me a question, a lot of the time my mind would just go blank. And I used to be like, what's wrong with me? Like, how come every time they ask me a question, I'm like, And I actually got to the point where I had to say that to them. I'd be like, okay, my brain has gone blank. And I worked through that, but it's just amazing how our inner critic can show up when we're about to be vulnerable. It kind of shuts us down. And I think one of the biggest surprises for me was how emotional I became in therapy. Once I felt safe to really sit with myself, because when you think about it, how often, I don't know about you, but in a week when I was doing therapy, I did not, I guess, book any time for myself to sit with myself, to think with my thoughts, to be with my thoughts, to just do the inner work. Like, when you look in 24 hours in a day, I wasn't doing that. I had never done that. So by booking a therapy appointment, and I was going weekly for quite some time, that made sure I had a dedicated time every week to focus just on me. And that was like a really big shift I noticed. And I was just like, whoa, how emotional am I becoming? Like, I thought these were things that I had already dealt with. Like, yeah, I know this. But when you really spend that time to sit with yourself and your feelings, and I didn't like crying. Like, I have always been a bit of a crier, but the feeling that it made me feel, I felt weak. I feel embarrassed. I was always saying, sorry. Oh my God, I'm so sorry when I'd cry. And I think I would hold on to it for so long that when I would cry, I'd get that. If you guys ever had that thing, like when you're about to cry and you feel it coming up from like your chest, and it's like a rise of like this feeling. It starts in my chest, or sometimes it would start a bit lower, and I would just go, I could feel it coming up. And when it gets to my throat, it's like this lump, and I can't swallow, I can't breathe. And all of a sudden I'm like, no, I don't want it to come up. And all of a sudden it's like from my throat, and then I'm like bawling my eyes out. So I hated that. I couldn't even sit with, I did a therapy group once, and I just remember, I've definitely come a long way now, because I remember like sitting in a room full of people, and it was like a group therapy session, and I was so uncomfortable with crying within myself, but I didn't realize how uncomfortable I was when other people would cry. And as soon as when someone else was crying in the group, I would actually look for the box of tissues to hand them to someone. And I didn't realize at that time, when you think about it, when someone's crying and you give them tissues, what do? Thank you. They get a tissue, but they kind of stop crying, and it's kind of, you block them. And because I was doing that, because I felt so uncomfortable with someone crying, and I wanted to fix it for them. I knew what crying felt like for me, and I knew I was embarrassed in front of people, so I kind of projected that onto people. And it was so interesting that within that group therapy sessions I would have too, I had kind of worked through that by the end of it, I was, starting to get comfortable with other people crying. And, when you are doing therapy on yourself, it's so interesting. The things that oh, yeah, I know that's happened. I've dealt with that and I've packed that away so neatly and that doesn't affect me. I'm all good. And then someone asks you like a thoughtful question and just gets you a bit, I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? And yeah, it's just something inside you, like especially with therapy. For me, it made me, I was finally seen. For one of the first times in my life, I was seen, I was heard, I was given permission to be myself. And I wasn't too big, I wasn't too loud. And that experience really changed how I viewed emotions. Because before therapy, I think a part of me believed that crying meant that, I was falling apart or there was something wrong. But tears now, crying just means that I'm releasing. It means that I've just stopped holding everything together. And I just remember crying. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so embarrassed. And I was like, why am I apologizing? It's just such an interesting thing that we do. And I think one of the other gifts that therapy gave me as a client is I don't have to have all the answers. And even therapy didn't need to give me all the answers. It gave me this thing called curiosity. And instead of asking myself like, why do I feel this way? Or like, mainly like, what's wrong with me? Why do I keep doing these same things? It was like, hang on, I wonder why I feel this way. And that just asking it in just a different way changed a lot. So instead of like judging myself harder, I used to judge myself. I was just like, I wonder why I judge myself. And instead of criticizing my reactions, I started wondering like, why do I do that? And instead of believing I was broken, I started asking myself, what happened that made perfect sense of why I felt like this today? And there are also sessions that were really, really hard. And sometimes I think people imagine therapy as this beautiful, uplifting experience every week. And it can be all of those things. But sometimes it isn't. And sometimes there's days when I drove home in complete silence, or days where I felt so drained, or days where I walked out of that room going, what the fuck? What did I just say? Like, I just was like, oh my God, what? Nothing makes sense. The week before I talked about this week, yeah. And sometimes those sessions stayed with me for days afterwards. And sometimes there were things like I was too honest. And sometimes I was like, oh my gosh, why do I have to be so honest? Like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. I just honestly wish I hadn't said that. But I think now I really look back on all of those sessions and they changed me the most because growth isn't comfortable. That's what I said, to my clients as well. Like, when we grow, it's not comfortable. And, another thing that I think of that I want to share with you is what I took away from my own therapy journey was that I was always looking for other people to help me. And I realized then that I didn't need someone to rescue me. I just needed someone to sit alongside me and just understand me and almost be like, yeah, Barbara, it's okay to be Barbara. I think that was a really important thing that helped me. And it helped me see myself more clearly. And looking back now, I honestly don't think therapy changed who I was. I think it helped me uncover who I'd always been underneath all the conditioning that I had through my life. The fear, the self-doubt, the expectations, and the stories that I've been carrying for so many years that weren't mine. And I don't think I realized at the time. But I honestly didn't realize at the time, but the sessions that I was doing quietly without anyone knowing it was slowly changing the relationship I had with myself. And I was beginning to see myself through a kinder lens. And I just had no idea just how important that experience would become in shaping the therapist that I would be one day. Like, that's pretty amazing. And you fast forward a few years and now I find myself sitting in the other chair. It's something that I will never, ever take for granted. And I feel like I've shifted because now I get to talk about, as a therapist, what I see. And I'm smiling when I'm saying this because I can't believe that I get to do this every day. I'm not just saying it because it's on my podcast. I genuinely Love this stuff. I could do this stuff 24/7, like every single day of the year. I just literally can't believe I get to do this as a job. It's just amazing. And so, okay, I'll stop saying how much I love being a therapist. I think you've kind of got that by now. So every single day when clients see me, so I see people online or in my studio, it just blows my mind. I'm like, you trust me. You trust me with parts of yourself that you've often never shared with anyone else. And they, again, mirror back what I would say when I first started therapy. Oh, Babs, I don't know where to start. I've never told anyone. I'm all over the place. I wanted to cancel this appointment today. Or, oh, God, I'm so sorry. I'm going to cry. I hear all that stuff all the time. And I just remember, I remember sitting there. I got you. And I also remember, am I doing therapy properly? So, you don't have to walk into your first session with your story organized. You don't need a timeline, and you don't need to take notes. You just need to come exactly who you are, and all you need to do is turn up. Because the bravest thing you're going to do in therapy is actually walking through the door, or online if you have your therapist online. That's enough. That's all you need to do. And in fact, the first session, there's very little to do with what you say, because it's about discovering what it feels like to be in the room with the therapist and to see if you like them. And it's really a strange feeling for so many of us. It certainly was for me, because so many of us have spent years trying to be the strong one, to be the reliable one, to be the one who holds everything together, pushes everything down, the one who doesn't burden other people. We try so hard to be like, I'm fine, I'm good, when we're not good. And then all of a sudden we're sitting in front of this person who we don't even know, and this person is gently inviting us to put all of that down and talk. It is uncomfortable. It's a little bit weird. And it would be strange if it wasn't, right? It's not a normal thing. Being in a room in the beginning with a stranger going, oh, hi, just going to talk to you about all my random, all my hard life stuff and my random stuff and everything in between. Here you go. And I think that one of the biggest misconceptions about therapy is that people think, I can't speak for all therapists, but I can definitely speak for myself. One of the biggest misconceptions about it is I think that some people think that we sit there analysing every word they say. Now, let me just be, I'm going to just be honest. I have had a couple of therapists in my time. I had to move around a little bit to find one I liked, because some of them were, I had one in particular that absolutely made my experience so horrible that after the session I went into my car and cried so much, and it actually made me feel worse. So going to therapy actually made me feel worse. She had the glasses on the end of her nose, and she looked over at me and looked down at me and was just a horrible person. Sorry, I'm just going to call it for what it was. I was like, how are you supposed to help people when you made me feel like a piece of shit, and then I told you all the stuff I was struggling with, and you just looked down at me? It was like, eh. And then I went to my car and cried, and I actually felt worse. How is that helping people? But from my perspective, I'm just going to let you know, as a therapist, I don't sit there analysing every word that you say. I promise you, I couldn't be further from the truth. I do not judge at all. Most of the time, I've seen it, tried it, been there, done it, got the t-shirt, I've lived a life. And so I think part of why I don't judge as a therapist is, I think the reason why I'm a good therapist is because I've sat in the chair before I've become a therapist. I've been a client. I've had to try a couple of therapists out, know what I didn't like, know what I liked. And then even then, it didn't really scratch the sides. I had to actually go and continue to find a different mentor, who I still work with today, by the way, who I really keep learning about myself. Once a month I still see her to check in and to learn things and uncover truths about myself. So I'm always learning, so I can be the best person I can be, but also so I can be the best therapist. But I do not judge at all, because I know what it feels like and it's not okay. But what I am doing if you were sitting in front of me, is I'm not thinking that you're too emotional or you're talking too much. But what I'm thinking is I'm wondering what you've had to carry on your own. I'm wondering how long you've been carrying it for. Who taught you that your needs come second? I wonder who taught you to apologize for crying. And I'm wondering what happened that led you to believe that you had to be everything for everyone else while quietly forgetting yourself. That's what I'm curious about. Not what's wrong with you, because there is nothing wrong with you. And I often say to my clients that our behaviors make sense when we understand the story behind them. Your anxiety makes sense. Perfect sense to me. Your overthinking makes perfect sense to me. Your people-pleasing makes sense. Your fear of rejection, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I know they're not enjoyable, but somewhere along the way, those behaviors probably helped you survive something. So therapy isn't about judging those parts of you. It's about understanding them. When we understand them, we've got all the information, right? And we stop fighting ourselves and we start to go, okay, you have all the information. And it's called therapy. Well, it's called work for a reason, because our brains are hardwired negative. So for us to do anything different, it is work. And it does take time. And I know it's annoying, believe me. I'm very good at starting things. I'm very good at finishing things, but in the middle, don't get me to do any processes. I want to skip the process. I want to get the starting done well, and I want to get to the end, but I don't want to do the middle. Yuck. And that was something I struggled in my own therapy journey, is my therapist often would say, oh, Barbara, it's the process again. And I was like, this freaking process. Like, I don't want to do the process. And that's okay. But it is hard and it does take time. And, you don't expect to walk into one session and leave completely transformed. But in healing isn't, cool, I just go one way. It's up and down and around the corner and one way and out the other way. Like, it's all over the place. And some sessions will feel really light and like, that was easy. And some sessions will feel emotional. Some will leave you thinking, I'm laughing because I remember sometimes you'll just walk out and go, what was that all about? And then a few days later you go, like I would always notice, for me, it was driving in the car when I was in the shower, or definitely when I was driving the car, I'd go, that connected to that. Or I had this big memory. Oh my God, I can't believe that happened. Like, I just kind of had all of these things, not all at the same time, but one day it'd be like this memory or this being unlocked, or, that's right, that happened, or I did that. Like, it's just amazing what our mind would do. And, that's what it would happen a few days after. I would just think, I'm actually responding differently to how I used to as well. And I was like, oh my God, this therapy thing is, I think, working, because it changes, and you change in small shifts, and that creates the biggest changes, but you don't notice them. And by having a therapist in front of you, they were like, oh, Barbara, you didn't normally say that. Now you're doing this. Or you started doing this and you do this. And when you're growing, most of the time when you're over the other side, you go, I never did that. But we did. Like, it's so interesting. And, I just want to speak directly to anyone who's listening, because if you're thinking about booking your first appointment, or maybe you've already booked it, your tummy's probably in knots. And, I just want to let you know that, maybe you'll cry, maybe you won't. And I just want to gently remind you of something, that you don't have to earn your place in therapy. You can just show up as you are and be yourself. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to convince your therapist that you deserve support. You don't have to hold anything back. A lot of people say to me, I'm worried if I say this, my therapist won't like me. Oh my gosh, like, the more you put in, the more you get out. But I want you just to be a human. Walk in as exactly as you are. And if the first thing you say is, I'm nervous, that's okay. I don't know where to start, great. And if you spend half the session crying, that's okay too. And if you spend half the session laughing because you just can't, because you're uncomfortable, that's okay too. Because there's no right way to begin. You just need to begin. And I promise you, walking through those doors is the bravest thing that you ever do. So as I wrap up today's episode, I keep thinking about those two chairs. One chair taught me what it feels like to be seen. The other taught me what a privilege it is to witness someone finding themselves again. And honestly, I don't think I'd be the therapist I am today if I'd never sat in the first chair. So if you're standing at the edge of taking that first step into therapy, I hope this conversation has made it just feel a little less scary. Because I promise you this, you don't have to have your life figured out before you ask for help. You don't have to wait until you're falling apart. You don't have to carry everything on your own. And sometimes the strongest thing you'll ever do isn't pretending you're okay. It's allowing someone to sit beside you while you find your way again. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. And if this episode resonated with you, or if you know someone who's about to start therapy, I'd love it if you shared this with them, because you never know who might need to hear that they're not alone. And until next time, be kind to yourself, stay curious, and remember, understanding yourself is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!